Hello, looking today two albums I own, secondhand copies of Jeff Buckley's Grace and Sketches for My Sweetheart the Drunk. I've owned both of these new. I think I've owned this new twice before. This is my third copy, and I've owned this new when it first came out, and I rebought it secondhand. Grace is a pretty well-known album, and it's a pretty amazing album as well. So Jeff Buckley, if you don't know, which I'm sure you do if you're watching this video, was a singer, guitarist in the 1990s. He released this in 1994. I don't know how you would really class his music. I guess it's got alternative rock with some elements of folk and kind of almost 60s style folk, some jazz elements as well. Kind of crossed across genre boundaries. When this first came out in 1994, so I remember this when I was a teenager, a young teenager. And I remember it because his songs were played on music TV. There was a TV station in my country called Max TV, or in my city actually. And they played music videos. And I remember the song So Real, one of his singles. And this is when he was still alive. It's when the Grace album cycle was still in swing. And he toured in New Zealand. I didn't go see him at the time. I was probably too young. But I remember he played the St. James Theatre, I think, in New Zealand. And they interviewed him. If you're from Auckland, in the old downtown shopping mall, there was a restaurant to the left side of the old food court. They interviewed him in there, which has since been torn down and replaced by another big building. Anyway, when the album at the time, and him as an artist at the time, it was really only after his death that this album became big. Like if you read, I've read a book that was written, I can't remember the name of it now, it was released in the early 2000s, and it was pretty well researched. The people he talked to family members and friends and ex-girlfriends and band members, and the account is that Grace was not a raging success. It was actually, he was signed to Columbia, and they were quite disappointed, as Jeff was as well. It didn't do as well as what they had hoped, but as many albums do, it became, maybe it wasn't just his death. Maybe even if he had stayed alive and released other albums, this album would have kind of picked up and become discovered and become bigger in his later in his career. But as it turned out, after he died is when it really became popular, and not even immediately after he died. It was more that song Hallelujah was covered by different people, and like I think it was covered on one of those like American Idol shows, or obviously it was a cover when he did it as well by Leonard Cohen. But my point is, it's taken a long time for it to come to be revered as much as it is. But it's a great album regardless. This edition that I have is not the original. I used to have the original edition, and the CD was black, not blue, and it didn't have track 11, Forget Her. So it says this is the 2004 edition. I actually think I still have the disc of the original one. The original one has Columbia across the top of it, and there he is with the guys he played with at the time. That's Mick Grondal, who was the bassist, and I think, was it Mike Johnson as the drummer? And he also played with Michael Ty as a guitar live. Oh, there we go. That's Michael Ty there. I might be pronouncing his name wrong. Tighe or something like that. Jeff was the son of Tim Buckley. Tim Buckley was a 1960s psychedelic folk artist, folk more, who also died an untimely death, I think, of drug overdose, though I might be wrong. And Jeff never really knew him well. Like I said, I read a pretty good biography that outlined his relationship with his father, and he did know his father. His father left his mother and him quite early in his life, but then he reconnected with him from time to time throughout his childhood. And particularly just before he died, he and Jeff were making a stronger connection, a stronger relationship. But I think he was about 10 when he died, or maybe a little bit younger than that. I can't remember exactly. Like I said, it's been about 20 years since I read that book. But because of that, he was the son of a relatively famous, not like Bob Dylan level or anything, but a relatively famous, and a famous for having a beautiful voice artist, Tim Buckley. I guess his son was kind of looked at as a big hope for success from the record company and the industry in general. Mojo Pin, Grace, those two songs he wrote with Gary Lucas. You see Gary Lucas's name in the liner notes. Gary Lucas is a guitarist, and I think he's still alive, and I can't remember who he played with. I think he played with, this is just purely from memory, I haven't read anything else recently, but I think Captain Beefheart, if not Captain Beefheart, King Crimson, some sort of 70s prog rock band. And he kind of took Jeff under his wing when Jeff moved to New York to make kind of a career, and they wrote music together. And Gary Lucas has this very specific guitar sound and tone. And if you listen to Gary Lucas's solo work from the 90s or 2000s, you can still hear that sound. It's quite a ghostly, that's what I really do, ghostly. I think that's how it's even referred in the liner notes, ghostly guitar or ethereal guitar or something. But those are both amazing songs. Last Goodbye is starts with a slide guitar, and it's more of a rock song. Lilac Wine is a quiet kind of folk vocal song. So Real, that was the first Jeff Buckley song I ever heard, and that's probably still my favorite song. I went through a period of not liking it, but I listened to it again recently, and it's I don't know how I can explain it, is that it's quite a haunting song. The chord progression he uses together with the way he sings, his vocals, it's very emotionally affecting for me. It's a really, I wouldn't even say a beautiful song, although it is beautiful, but it's more, I don't know, it sounds almost like painful or harrowing or something. But I love that song, and I have loved it since I was like a 14-year-old or something. There's a line in that song where he says, "I couldn't awake from the nightmare. It sucked me in and pulled me under," which if you know anything about Jeff, that's how he died. He died not from a nightmare, but he went swimming in the Mississippi River, or the lower reaches of the Mississippi River, I think in Memphis, and he got caught in the current of the undercurrents of the river, or of the wake of a passing boat. No one really knows how, but I think he was fully clothed as well. He was wearing his boots and jeans. I think it was the Wolf River, not that I'm an expert on the Mississippi River, but from looking at maps and stuff of that, and I've looked at the Google map of Memphis. Is it Memphis? Now I'm second guessing myself. Is it New Orleans? Maybe it was New Orleans. Yeah, if it's the end of the river, it wouldn't be Memphis. Is Memphis at the end of the river? No, Memphis is up in Tennessee. Jesus, this is my memory. I should I should really be sorting this stuff out in my memory before I make these videos. Regardless of what city it was in the kind of the delta area of the river, where the rivers kind of part into many different streams, and I think it was the Wolf River is what they call it. Anyway, he got sucked in and pulled under in the river, so that line in that song always kind of stuck with me after his death. Okay, here, I've just found it. It was Memphis. Here we go. On the evening of Thursday the 29th, Buckley, his band, flew to Memphis to join him, blah, blah, blah. The same evening, Buckley went swimming fully dressed in Wolf River Harbor, a slackwater channel of the Mississippi River. That's right. So slackwater, I learned, is kind of like a part they make that's kind of calmer for boats to anchor in the river, and the current's not as strong, but often the current can be deceptively swift under the surface in Memphis. Here we go. So I should have gone with my first instincts. I made myself look like an idiot. He was singing the chorus of Led Zeppelin's Whole Lotta Love while swimming under the Memphis suspension bridge. Keith Foti, a roadie in Buckley's band, remained on the shore. So there's quite a good. They interviewed Keith Foti in the book I read, and he explains from his point of view exactly what happened. He walked into the river, like he said, he could hear his voice singing, and then it stopped, and then he just kind of disappeared. And but yeah, it's kind of just such a I don't know, a myth building way to die, I guess. The way that we think about these rock stars and the way they die, and we think he was only 30 when he died. Just imagine the music he could have made if he'd stayed alive. Anyway, so Hallelujah. That's, like I said, that's the song that kind of I think most people would have heard of his. Lover, You Should Have Come Over. That's a beautiful song. Corpus Christi Carol is a vocal, very at the forefront of it, very high pitched, I think a falsetto. Eternal Life is I guess the most rock song on it. He does a live version of that's even more kind of almost metal sounding. Really kind of like chugga chugga riff. Dream Brother, probably my second favorite song on the album. That is the lyric in that is, maybe I overuse this word, but beautiful. He's singing what I've taken from it about his father. His father is his dream brother, and he's kind of talking about don't be like the one who made me so old, the one who left behind his name. So a father who's left his name with him, Buckley, but he left him. That's all he left. And he made him old. He made him grow up fast. He didn't have the chance to be a kid. And there's in the verse, the imagery he uses of this, the dark winged angel, gives me goosebumps talking about it. It's a really amazing song with an amazing lyric. Forget Her wasn't on the original release. That's they've added on, and that's a good song, not bad. Produced and engineered and mixed by Andy Wallace. The mixer to the stars, isn't he? The engineer. Like a lot of bands in the 90s, their albums got sent to Andy Wallace to fix. So 10 out of 10 album. Really is a pretty amazing end to end. But his only album, his only studio album. This, My Sweetheart the Drunk, sketches for My Sweetheart the Drunk, is a collection of demos and they're not really fully formed songs in some cases. They're not, they haven't been properly recorded in a studio and mixed, all that, kind of thing. And you can tell that there's some good stuff and some things that I think are kind of a bit hit or miss. Nightmares by the Sea, that first song in disc 2, that's a great song. Catatonia, the Swedish doom metal band, or I guess they're more kind of prog metal nowadays. They did a cover of that on Tonight's Decision. but I think Jeff Buckley's version is the best. Haven't You Heard track 3 from disc 2 is also great. I like that song. There's some good stuff throughout it. Sky's a Landfill, Vancouver. That was on one of his greatest hits collections. I remember Vancouver. Another one on here. Oh, Satisfied Mind, the last one. That's quite a nice song. That's just him with a guitar. I think that's a cover of a old blues artist, I'm pretty sure. But it is what it is. It's a collection of things that he hadn't finished working on. And to be honest, if you know a bit about him, if you read the book about that period after the Grace album cycle finishes and he kind of thinks, what's next? He is at a bit of a loose end about what he wants to do. I think he brings in Tom Verlaine from Television to kind of produce some tracks, but then that doesn't work out. He doesn't like the end result. His band come down to kind of record with him, but then he's not ready and they leave, and that's why they came back the night that he died, which is kind of a sad coincidence. They were coming back to kind of start work on the album, and he died that night. So yeah, I'd say certainly this isn't what he intended to be a second album. Some of the songs I'm sure he would have used, he may have changed, polished up, or used as they were, but I don't think all the songs were intended as such to make up the second album. And everything that happened before that would point to that. I really should go back and read that book because it's a very good book, and it like I said, so many books that are written after the death of someone, they kind of they don't interview the people that they should. People don't want to talk to the book writer because they feel whatever. But I think that from what I remember, that book it talked to the people that you would really want to be talked. Like I said, the guy who was with him when he died. I'm pretty sure his mother. The guys in the band with him, his producers and people like that, like I said, his ex-girlfriends. There's a few names that kind of come up throughout it. But yeah, anyway, I guess that's not really important at the end of the day. It's the music that is important. And he had huge, huge potential. This album alone, just the potential of this, you hear this and you think, my God, what he could have done. He was only 30 when he died. I also say that I've heard he did a vocal rendition of Dido's Lament. Is it Dido? I think it's Dido, which was the Purcell, is it an opera? Or the piece that Purcell wrote? Yes, it is from an opera. I'm sure if you heard it, you would know. It's got that descending, and it's written from the perspective of Dido, who was the queen of Carthage. I don't know if she was. I think she was a mythical queen, and the guy from the Iliad. What's his name? Odysseus. But it's in the Aeneid, which I don't know that much about ancient texts. Whatever. One of those Greek heroes is with Dido on the beach as he's trying to get home, and he stays with her, but then he decides he has to leave, and it breaks her heart, and she kills herself. And she's singing as she's planning to die, or as she dies, the word she sings, and it's quite a like I said, if you heard the original Purcell written in the 18th century, you would recognize the tune, the melody, or whatever you want to call it. But he does Jeff Buckley did a particularly amazing vocal rendition for some sort of event in Britain. And I remember listening to a podcast about it. One of the organizers of the event was talking about how he didn't know who Jeff Buckley was, and he saw his name on the rundown of the people going, and he was like, okay, whatever. And then Jeff Buckley started singing it, and he said it was like one of the most emotionally moving events he's had from a piece of art in his life. Like, it was just absolutely blown away by this guy's voice. So yeah, Jeff Buckley Grace, his one and only studio album. Jeff Buckley Sketches, as it says, Sketches. I guess that's the key thing for My Sweetheart the Drunk. They've also released a lot of greatest hits, a lot of live albums. I had a live video cassette of his. I think it was live in Chicago. A concert he did there. Yeah, the VHS cassette in the late 90s I had. And I think there's a few other live ones, live in Paris or something like that. He also had the EP that he recorded in a cafe, the Cine Cafe in New York before he was famous. And other greatest hits and things that they're really kind of dragging out. So yeah, highly recommend this album, as I'm sure everyone else who's ever listened to it does. It's not revered and used as cited as influence for so many bands for no reason. It's truly amazing. Thank you for watching.